They're the best poker players in the world. And in the next 30 minutes, they'll help you become a better player. Led by the professor, Howard Lederer, FullTiltPoker.net has created an exclusive classroom to teach the strategies, techniques, and nuance that separate poker winners from losers. Joining Howard in studio today will be champion poker players Phil Ivey, Jennifer Harmon, Lane Flack, Daniel Negreanu, Chris Ferguson, and Antonio Esfandiari. It's a rare opportunity to learn from the best. FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
Hey everybody, step inside the FSN Poker Room. It is another tutorial handed out by those who already have their poker PhDs. As FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros, I'm Chris Rose, of course, working with one of the greatest poker players in the entire world, the professor, Howard Lederer. Good to see you again.
Great to be here, Chris.
Now, I'm thinking about it this way. I'm an amateur poker player. If, say, Tiger Woods approached me on the putting green and said, Chris, let's go hit balls for a half hour, I wouldn't pass up that opportunity. That's what everybody out there should be thinking about when it comes to poker, right?
Look, every week we've got a great lineup of pros that are looking to share the tips that have turned them into the great players they are. And if you take those tips and start using them in your own game, you're going to turn yourself into a better player.
One thing that everybody should keep in mind, this is all situational here. You can't apply everything in every situation that we talk about, right?
Absolutely. I think what the players at home really need to realize, take these tips and then have the guts to use them even maybe before you fully understand them. And that's how you're going to learn about which situations these plays work in and which situations they don't.
All right, of course, there is no poker without bluffing. It is one of the sexier topics in all of poker. Let's get it going.
Like the all-in, bluffing in No Limit Hold'em is one of the most powerful plays you can make, but it's very volatile. Usually when you're just making the all-in move, you're trying to protect a hand that you really suspect is good. But in bluffing, you know you're beat, and you're trying to steal a pot that you wouldn't have won otherwise. So it's very volatile because, of course, the bluff, when it gets called, can be devastating. So you need to know when to use it.
Nothing better to see on an FSN poker episode than seeing somebody bluff. And our first instance, make sure your story adds up. Barry Greenstein here taking on Johnny Chan.
Yeah, well, here's a classic situation where Barry bluffs a pot, but he's very careful to make sure his story adds up. And really, the story he's trying to tell Johnny Chan this entire hand is, I have a good ace. So he raises before the flop. Johnny Chan calls him with the queen-jack. He draws out here. He hits his jack. He checks to Barry. Barry bets, just like an ace-king or an ace-queen would. Johnny Chan calls. The turn comes a blank, another 5. Johnny checks it. You know, Johnny doesn't know his hand's good at this point, but now Barry checks like a big ace would have. Now the ace hits. Johnny is thinking, well, I probably had the best hand now. Maybe Barry has an ace. He's going to bluff it here on the river, and he told the story from the beginning of the hand all the way to the end. He was telling the same story. I've got an ace-king or an ace-queen, and these are the classic situations where a bluff like that will work.
All right, so in that case, Barry Greenstein's story did add up. Occasionally, though, you guys look at each other and you say, wait a second, something doesn't smell right here. And this was a case you were going against Johnny Chan.
Look, when you're going against a great player like Johnny Chan, there are not going to be that many situations where his story doesn't add up. But this is a hand where I really didn't feel like the story did add up. Here's a standard three-way situation. Phil Ivey's folded the button. It's just between the two blinds. We see a cheap flop for just the blinds. It's a limp pot. Johnny Chan has flopped bottom pair. He checks it to me. I've got nothing, obviously. I have a 5 high. I make a bet here, and Johnny Chan calls. Probably just calling for value at this point. He has bottom pair. He's just hoping that I'm bluffing or making a bet with some kind of a draw, and he calls. The 10 of clubs hits here, and Johnny's going to make a bet. And here's a situation where I could not put him on a hand. There are really 3 possible hands I really felt like he could have. He could either have a very big hand, like 2 pair or a queen jack here, at which point I just felt like if he had a big hand like that, he would have checked it to me and let me bluff it again. The other 2 hands I thought he might have are a bluff, something like bottom pair like the one he had, or a marginal hand, a hand that just hit a 10. A hand like a jack 10 or a queen 10, at which point I felt like my bluff would get him to fold one of those hands. So here was a situation where, at least in terms of putting him on a really big hand, his story didn't add up. He could have had me beat, as he did. But the story of the big hand didn't add up. I felt like a raise would make him fold any other hand than a big hand, and that's why I tried bluffing that pot.
Please just tell me one thing. You did not win the shirt off his back. Please.
No, I'm going to leave Johnny's shirts in his closet.
You're dapperly clad today. Hey,
much,
one other
Chris.
point before we do move on. You want to make sure that there are enough chips, that you've got enough chips and the person that you're bluffing has enough chips as well. Can you explain that?
When you're playing all-in, no-limit poker, you can only bet either as much as you have or your opponent has. And whoever has fewer chips, that's the limit of the betting in that hand. And one thing I do see amateurs doing a lot of is they don't tend to bluff when they have short chips, because they realize there's a lot of money in the pot. A small little bet with the rest of their chips probably isn't going to work on a bluff. But one thing I do see them overlook is sometimes they've got a lot of chips. It's a bunch of chips in the middle of the pot, and their opponent has a very small stack. And they put that big stack in the pot, and then they realize, oh, I really wasn't betting that much because my opponent only had a small stack, and I wasn't able to bet enough to make him fold. It's definitely a classic error. You need to make sure there's enough money in play to make that bluff work.
All right, I hope everybody out there was paying attention to the nuance of the bluff. We got plenty more coming your way with the Professor, Howard Lederer. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Daniel Negreanu. I'm going to share with you a tell that I find to be very effective. Often when a flop comes out, you should watch your opponent's eyes. If you see this, a glance at the chips, chances are that's their subconscious telling them they want to bet because they like what they see. Conversely, that same player, if he looks blankly at the flop and seems to have no interest, chances are he doesn't. So you should go ahead and bet right at him.
Still to come, the world's finest poker players gather for a no-holds-barred roundtable conversation on the art of the bluff. Secrets are revealed in this exclusive forum. Plus, Chris Ferguson is back to demonstrate his amazing card-throwing techniques. And grab your chips. The magician has a new trick to teach. But up next, more from Daniel Negreanu. We'll go behind the poker face as Kid Poker describes how he pulled off one of the best bluffs ever seen on TV.
If I show a bluff, is that good for the game?
Yeah.
All right, that's good for the game then.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good. Oh.
So stick around and learn from the pros.
FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros. Brought to you by FullTiltPoker.net. Learn, chat, and play with the pros. FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros. Once again, your host, Chris Rose.
We are back as we continue to hang out with the 2004 Poker Player of the Year, Daniel Negreanu, and right now it is time to go behind the poker face. And Daniel, I've been told by countless pros out there, there's nothing better than pulling off a successful bluff, right?
Tell you what, the adrenaline rush after taking a pot from somebody is like just undescribable.
All right, well, actually, we can describe it and also show it here. You're taking on Freddie Deeb. This is heads-up play in Las Vegas, poker at the Plaza, and you are dominated right off the bat.
Well, this hand, we were about even in chips, and Freddie and I were both limping in. We weren't raising a lot, so I went ahead and limped with the ace. And he raised 7,000 more, which is pretty good. I know he's got a good hand, but, you know, an ace heads up, I figured I'd have to at least see the flop, so I went ahead and called. This is about 15,000 in the pot now. Now here Freddie hits gin, and he's going to come right out and bet 16,000, which is about the size of the pot. I felt like he had a good hand, but maybe queens or jacks. I had just the naked ace. I thought, you know what, if I call here on the turn, maybe I can pick up the pot if he checks and represent the king. So I quickly call, hoping, in a sense, that Freddie does check the turn. Now that's a scare card. Me and Freddie both love little cards. So he's a little worried about that card. He checks it, and I'm going to decide here to bet 30,000, looking to pick it up.
Even though you're drawing dead, as you can see, the percentages, I mean, there is no percentage there to help you.
Well, of course, if I knew he had ace-king, I wouldn't have gone this far. But again, I'm hoping he's got queens or jacks. I bet the 30,000, and he just calls. He's worried about that board. There's a lot of hands that can beat him. And here comes the river where, now this card, I have just the naked ace of hearts. That fills the three of a kind if you had a four, the straight's there, the flush is there, and Freddie bet 65,000. It's kind of a confusing bet. I decided he doesn't have an ace-high flush because I have the ace. He doesn't have a set, three of a kind, or two pair because he would have raised on the turn, so I decided he doesn't have it. My dilemma is, do I have the guts to go for this play? I could move all in, but if I do that, is it going to be too suspicious?
Now, you're looking at your cards and stuff. What's this?
Well, right now I'm thinking about whether or not I should do this, because this is the whole tournament right here. He's bet 65,000. I'm going to raise him 100,000 right here, kind of making it a size of that. You know what? Please call. I want to sell the idea that I want to call. You know, if he makes this call, I'm in really bad shape. So
Only 100.
the whole tournament was lying on this one key hand because we've played so even for so long. And at this point, I'm pretty much sure that Freddie has ace-king. But he's thinking, well, I have to have the flush. I have to have three of a kind. He has to think that he's beat.
You making any eye contact with him?
No, I'm not giving away anything.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm just trying to focus on
Stuff love a set, huh?
All right, well, you have a great reaction, so let's listen.
All right, good hand.
If I show bluff, is that good for the game?
Yeah.
All right, that's good for the game then.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. Oh.